What's going on, guys? Today I have a slightly different video for you. I recently purchased this 2014 RXPX. I actually just purchased it yesterday from a private seller on Facebook Marketplace. And I wanted to start this video to basically show things you should be looking at, or if you just purchased a used ski, things you should kind of walk around and look at. I know a few months ago I made a video on things you should look out for if you're looking to buy a used ski, but I was referencing that video on my 2024 RXTX, so everything was obviously pretty much brand new on it. This is a 11-year-old ski now, so obviously there's going to be some things that are worn out and need to be addressed, or 11 years of ownership, things are going to be broken or missing, whatever. So that's what this video is going to be about. Now this won't be a video where I'm kind of showing you things to look out for as if you were going to look at the ski. I'm just going to kind of do a walkthrough of this particular one and show you things that I find that are wrong or need to be addressed, because it's, that's kind of more realistic. There's never going to be like a staple piece where you go to look at a ski and it's going to be the same problems for every single one you look at, and that's why I'm going to try to make this video here. So this is a 2014 RXPX 260, has 140, 150 hours, something like that. And the owner mentioned that he did recently have the intercooler replaced. I'm assuming it was leaking, sending water through the engine. So we will check to see if there's any water in the oil or anything, because sometimes that's a little left over. I think he just had the intercooler replaced. He also recently did the changed the battery, had the fuel injectors replaced or cleaned. I'm not exactly sure, but we'll take a look at that and see. I kind of bought this really sight unseen. I mean, I went to see it in person when I bought it, but we just basically did a startup test and that was pretty much it. I personally am not too concerned about the condition of skis when I buy them, because I would just fix them up anyway. It's not really a problem for me. Unless it's something catastrophic like engine failure, then I kind of have to factor that into the cost. So anyway, let's go ahead and we'll just take a look at this thing from front to back and take note of things that need to be addressed. So right off the bat, functionally or cosmetically, the gel coat, this is a gel coat ski, by the way, 2014. The newer skis use a acrylic finish. This is gel coat. The gel coat is in pretty good condition. There's a few nicks here and there. Not a big deal though, because I have gel coat repair kits, but the plastics are all completely faded. These are beyond repairable. There's nothing you can really do to bring these back to life. So what I'm going to be doing at some point is experimenting with truck bed liner. Now, I've done plastic restoration in the past using actual trim paint, and it works as long as you do like the proper clean it with rubbing alcohol, sand it, do all that good stuff, and it holds up pretty decently. But I kind of want to make this ski more durable, so I'm going to be using truck bed liner on the plastics, and I'll try to get that on video so you guys can see. Other than that, let's take a look in the front here. I do have the plastics. They are right there. There was a lot of mold and stuff in here, so yesterday when we brought it home, I just sprayed everything with Simple Green, gave it a good washout. I noticed when I did that, when I had everything apart, that the battery is only being held in with a, I forget what those things are called, bungee cord. So I did order a replacement tie down. I just referenced the part number on epc.brp.com and looked at what the tie down is for this model. Now this is a group 30 size battery. The older skis used a larger 30 size, which honestly I think they should go back to. I think the size 20s are just a little too small, especially for the crappy batteries that they are giving you now. But other than that, everything looks nice and clean in here, very minimal corrosion. I did pop off the fuse box yesterday because sometimes water gets in there and it just corrodes the fuses, causes problems with the bus bars and everything. But it's spotless, so it's a good seal. Ski was obviously never sunk. Gas tank is clean. That's pretty much it for up here. It does come with a safety kit and a fire extinguisher, which is nice. The next thing that sometimes I find on older skis is the LCD is burned out. It just has like a dark patch in the middle from it sitting out in the sun. This one is perfectly fine. The cluster test on boot shows that both dial gauges work. There's no burnout. This LCD almost looks brand new. So I don't know if it was just garage kept all its life or if the screen was replaced at some point. And you can see there, it just went away, but we're at 150 hours. So we're good to go there. Again, up here, we just have some fade on the plastics. The triggers and everything are just faded. So not a big deal functionality wise. It's just something that, you know, at some point I may want to address. Moving to the engine side, very, very minimal corrosion. Now I do think this was a saltwater ridden ski because when I washed it, there was some just dried up salt. At some point, I don't know if it was always salt ridden or not. This was a New Jersey ski, but it was mainly used, or it was previously used up in Massachusetts in a lake. So I imagine at least part of it was salt and the rest was freshwater. So I'm just going to pop one of these spark plug tubes off, and spark plugs look relatively new. Also note there is no oil on the coil pack. Generally, if your spark plug tube seals go bad, that is these guys here. These seals will go bad that are under the cover, and they'll leak oil into the spark plug tube. So if you ever change your spark plugs and you notice a bunch of oil on them, on the top side, that's what that is from. So dry on this one, and dry on this one as well. So we're good to go there. I'm probably going to be changing the spark plugs and oil and stuff anyway, coolant especially, because, you know, I like to do that on new skis. Now this supercharger, this is the 260 supercharger. Cosmetically it looks fine, but that is a 200-hour or every 2-year service life supercharger. Previous owner didn't replace it. I'm not sure how long he had it. He did check the shaft play and there was basically nothing, but we don't know what the previous owner did. So I am most likely going to remove that and rebuild it to be safe, because as you can see here, I have some old superchargers. Actually, I have one here that failed. You can see the clutch washers are still on this one, but the main gear broke off, and that sent bits all through the engine. I'm not sure if it just got too hot or if it was kind of locked up and fatigued, but essentially that broke off, sent bits all through the engine, and there was no choice. We had to remove the engine, disassemble it to get all of the debris out. This one was starting to slip, and you can see that the washers and everything are still fine here, but the point still remains, if anything happens to those clutch washers or the gear and it breaks and it sends parts into your engine, you know, you're gonna have a rough day. You have to pull the engine. There's no way around it. You have to remove all of the metal debris. So just to be safe, I'm going to remove that supercharger and rebuild it. We'll take a look at the engine here, or the oil. It looks fairly clean, but all oil can also separate. So I'm gonna crank it in a minute and we'll check the oil again. Let me just take a look at the coolant here. Coolant actually looks fairly clean, so I wonder if this was replaced at some point. But there's no oil marks or anything. I'll put that back on shortly. Everything else on here looks fantastic. I mean, very, very minimal corrosion. I'm gonna take a look. Yeah, the motor mounts will probably have to get addressed at some point. It has some corrosion on it. Can't see the one that's under there, and I can't see the one that's under there. I do know that the intercooler was replaced. I can see the branding on there, Chris Lacey Power Sports, so I know that was done by a very reputable shop. So we'll get more into the engine later. Let's go ahead and move on to the jet pump, and then right after we're going to get it connected to Buds to take a look at the software side. All right, so back here, right off the bat, I noticed one of the drain plugs is missing, so we will get that replaced. I see the sacrificial anode is hanging on for dear life. There's basically nothing left to it, so we're going to replace that as well. There's also an anode on the jet pump, which you probably can't see on the GoPro. Let me see if I can get a better view. Yeah, GoPro does not pick up things very well, but that one actually doesn't look too bad. So I wonder if that was replaced at some point. So let's go ahead and crawl underneath and we'll take a look at the impeller and wear ring. All right, so here we are. The drive shaft has definitely seen some better days. The impeller was definitely replaced with a Solus upgrade. Not sure which one it is. I'm not even sure if the ski is tuned or unlocked or anything. But the wear ring also looks basically brand new. Actually, it looks like it maybe has an hour on it at that rate. Very, very new looking, clean. There is some nicks on the impeller, but not bad at all. So we are good to go down here. All right, so remember, this is a 2014, which means it is a Buds 1 ski, or the original Buds version, not Buds 2. That's when they did the switch over in 2016. So we're gonna go ahead and let this connect here. But on startup with the key in, it does the 2 beeps. There's no fault codes or anything, which is a good sign. There still could be some soft codes that we can reference with engine hours, things like that. So let's take a look here. All right, so we can see, actually, let me get rid of this guy's phone number because I'm not sure who that is. So as you can see, we have, it was at least serviced 7 times through software, which is good. Everything does check out here. Vehicle hours 150. We can see that the VIN number does match up. Let's take a look. There was 4 keys originally. There's 2 keys here, 1 original and 1 in the learning mode. Let's go to faults. Okay, so we have a throttle actuator, high exhaust, and last session interrupted, and these are all at 149 hours. So what I'm going to do is clear these because they are occurred codes, which means they're not currently active. And we'll leave that as is. So when we do a start test in a minute, we'll take a look at that again. We'll go to the history here, RPM throttle opening. So funny enough, it doesn't look like this was run too hard. Wow, maximum intake pressure 27 psi, highest exhaust was 282. So the exhaust may have overheated at some point. It may have sucked in debris or whatever, or it just ran dry. So we'll take note of that. And I also noticed that the highest battery voltage recorded was 15.6 volts. Now, generally, you only get a 15.6 volt battery voltage when your regulator is going bad. But of course, it could also be from some jump packs and things like that. So won't pay too much attention to that. We're not getting any fault codes for the electrical system, which is good. So we'll keep that in mind. And you can see here, it was mostly run on the normal key, 3% history on learning key, and our RPM here. So it was very rarely abused. Actually, most of this was pretty much just idle time and then cruising. So generally for me, cruising is around 4,000 to 6,500. So 24% of the history of this entire runtime, 150 hours, was at that, but 40% was basically just at idle. So I wonder if this guy was kind of just fishing on it or whatever. I'm not really sure. So very, very rarely abused. Actually, you can see the peak RPM, 8160, by the way. That's basically just like coming out of choppy water and stuff. But the wide open throttle is only 4.5%. So this ski was not really abused, and it kind of shows. So that's good. We can see, yeah, it has the lap timer, average top speed, fuel autonomy, which basically just gives you fuel stats, things like that are coded on, and the rest of that. This actually says it has a lake water temperature sensor. Not sure how much I believe that. Sometimes these things are wrong. All right, so the next thing I want to do is just start the ski up, let it run for like 3 seconds, just enough to kind of stir the oil. And then I'm going to check the oil again. And the reason you want to do this is because, as you know, oil and water will separate. So if there is any water or coolant in the oil, if you just check it when it's cold, it's not going to show anything. You have to kind of stir the oil up in order for it to mix, and that's when you're going to show that milkiness. Otherwise, it'll just kind of phase separate, and you'll either get a all water reading or a all oil reading. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. that's good enough since we're not connected to water. We'll pull this guy. Yep, and there you go. So it is slightly milky. Not sure how good the GoPro picks that up, but there is some water in there. Now it's very, very minimal, almost nothing at all. So we could have an issue, or we may not. There could just be some leftover water in the system from when the intercooler failed and it was replaced. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pressure test the system, and there's basically two ways you can get water, or I should say three ways you can get water in the engine. One is by running the hose through the ski with the engine off. You will backfeed water into the engine. The second way is if you have an intercooler failure. Basically, the way the intercooler works on these is you have the raw water and then you have your air, and they're separated. They're completely isolated. But if any one of those cooling jackets cracks or corrodes, the air and the water can mix. And obviously, when you are running your engine, you're sucking in all that air. You start to suck in all the water with it as well. And then that's how you mix water in the engine. And then the third way is that you're getting coolant in the engine. And that can happen from a few different ways. Your oil cooler can go bad. Your head gas can go bad. You can have a crack in the block. All kinds of things. I know for a fact that it is not coolant on here, or at least I should say, I'm pretty confident it's not coolant because the coolant level is where it's supposed to be. And it also is not, there's no oil particles or dirty particles or anything like that. So if anything, I would assume that we have a intercooler issue. So I'm going to pressure test the intercooler. And basically the way I'm going to do that is take off the supercharger inlet. I'll use my boost leak tester, this guy over here. I'll fill it up to 10-15 psi, and if the intercooler is bad, we will hear air coming out of the flush port, because that's basically the only point at which it can fail. Now, I highly doubt that's the problem. I have a feeling it's just some leftover oil or water in the system from when the intercooler failed. As you know, whenever there is water in the oil, you have to change the oil 3, 4, sometimes 5 times, and then you have to follow a boil out procedure to get the rest of the water out. So when the shop replaced the intercooler, they most likely did a few oil changes and then told the person, just take it easy, do the boil out procedure. But you know, who knows? I was not there for it. So we're going to take it safe and do a pressure test just to rule that out. All right, so to do this, all we need to do is take off the supercharger inlet. It's just one screw holding that clamp on, and then that entire elbow will come off. So we'll just push it out of the way. All right, so this is what the boot looks like. It's very similar on every model that's supercharged. This is a 2014, and it's almost identical to 2024 above, basically. Accordion style intake boot. So I fully removed mine because I'm going to be putting a air intake on this ski, but that's, you know, details for another story. So all we need to do is go ahead and couple this boost leak tester onto the supercharger inlet. They're all pretty much the same size. This is a 3-inch intake tester. I'll post a link to this just like I do in every other video, but we'll just clamp this on. Okay, with that connected down there, we just need to go ahead and connect our air supply. So I'll put that on there. Make sure that it is not already pre-filled. If you have a air compressor, you want to make sure that your dial is turned all the way down. All right, air supply is connected. And remember, we're only going to be putting around 10 to 15 PSI. You do not want to go too high on this. We'll start filling this up. We'll hear the system filling up with air. You can see the pressure is gaining. We can also hear for leaks and stuff as well, which I'm kind of hearing a leak, I think. Yeah, there's a boost leak I can feel just down here. You can hear it. So I'm gonna go ahead and address that first. All right, so I fixed that. It was just a loose hose clamp, but I still hear a leak. And if we come back here, you can hear air coming out of the flush port. So the intercooler is shot. So I don't know if it was just another defective intercooler that went in there. Let me shut this air supply off. But that would explain why there is water in the oil. So I'm gonna do some research on alternative intercoolers to go ahead and put in here. But in the meantime, we'll go ahead and move on to the next item to search. The next thing I want to check is compression. So be very simple. All we need to do is remove the spark plugs. The SeaDoo uses a standard 5/8, and then we'll go ahead and put a compression tester on each cylinder to see what reading we get. Now, since there is water in the engine, I don't know if that's going to throw off our numbers or not. We'll just have to kind of test and see. But aside from doing the compression test, that's pretty much all I need to check on this ski. Everything else kind of checks out. Now, when I do additional work in the future with newer videos, I most likely will be pulling the jet pump to replace the grease. But I also did not hear any bearing whine, and since the impeller and wear ring look brand new, I'm assuming it was most likely replaced when they did that service. So we'll do that in another video, but for now I just want to go ahead and do a compression check, and then we'll go ahead and drain the oil that's contaminated with water. We'll put fresh oil in, and then we obviously will not do any water-based testing or connect a ski to the hose until we get that intercooler replaced. So let's go ahead and do a compression check now. Just real quick, these are the spark plugs that came out. So these really look almost brand new, so I'm not even going to bother replacing them. It looks like they only have maybe an hour or two of runtime on them, so very, very clean. So let's go ahead and we'll do the compression check. This is the tester that I'm going to use, so we'll just thread this into each spark plug tube. With all the spark plugs out, crank it, and we'll see the number that we get up to. All right, this is going to be cylinder number 1. All right, this is number 2. And here we are on cylinder 3. All right, so cylinder 2 was slightly low, but again, we can't really say there's any kind of problem yet until we know how the ski runs when everything is up and good. Because when you have water in the cylinders or in the crank when it's lubricating the oil, that can lower the numbers. And also, if the ski sits for a while, piston rings can kind of get stuck in place. So it's kind of best to do a compression test after the ski's been running for a while, or at least when you know it's capable of running, because you can run into situations like this. So we're not going to say it's any problem yet, but I do want to go ahead and pull all of the contaminated oil out. We'll put a fresh filter in as well, and just kind of let it sit until we address the intercooler issue. Check that out, guys. That is the wrong filter, plus it's collapsed, plus there is a lot of water in there. So pull this out so you can kind of see, but yeah, that was not doing too good. The good news is I don't see any metal shavings, but yeah, this thing collapsed, which means I was really struggling for oil. I wouldn't be surprised if it triggered the oil bypass, but yeah, let's go ahead and get this all fixed. All right, have a nice vacuum going on the oil, and you can see that is milky as can be. So I did extract the oil that was kind of sitting at the bottom of the oil filter housing. Got the old filter off, which, by the way, it was so collapsed that it was actually stuck on the center post here, so I had to kind of break it off. So we're gonna go ahead and put in a new filter with a new gasket set, and then we'll put in some fresh local moly as well. But let's go ahead, we'll get this thing all set up first. On a side note, I'm going to mention this in any oil change video that I do. There's 2 gaskets for the oil filter housing. There's actually 3. One goes on the top bolt there, but you generally only need to replace that when it starts to leak. You have a thicker O-ring, and then you have a thinner O-ring. The color does not matter. Sometimes both are black, sometimes the thin one is red or orange. It does not matter. But if you look on here, you're going to see the thick one, which goes into that indent in the housing, and then you have the narrow one, the thin one, that goes at the top. The placement is absolutely critical. If you put the thin one in that cavity and the thick one at top, you will leak oil out of your housing. And when you tighten down your housing, this top thin O-ring will be exposed. I don't know why they do it. Tactically, you don't even need this top O-ring. You can leave it out if you wanted to. It's more so just a secondary ring in case the first one starts to leak. So that, for some reason, that always causes confusion. You want the thick O-ring at the bottom and the indent thin at the top. When you put the housing back in, that top O-ring will be visible around the ring. So you didn't put it in incorrectly, that is just always going to be exposed. All right, so here is the new filter. This is a OEM one, not a knockoff. Now, when I mentioned a minute ago that the yellow one is the incorrect filter, technically that was how it used to be when these skis were kind of new, but it didn't take long to realize that the paper style filter is just not, it's not enough for the supercharged ski. So if you have any supercharged ski at all, I would say even to the 185s, the very, very old ones, but especially the 215s, 230s, 260s, 300s, and the 325s, you want to use the mesh one. These are much stronger. You can squeeze this really hard and it will not collapse. The paper ones will. They're too flimsy for the supercharged skis. So I have the new O-rings on, got a little bit of oil on those, and then I'm going to go ahead and slide this in and we'll put it back into the housing. All right, we'll get that tightened up. By the way, guys, when you tighten that bolt down for the oil filter housing, you do not need to over tighten it. It's not going to come loose on you. Tactically, once that black O-ring is seated in the cartridge housing, you're not going to leak any oil. You basically want to get the bolt down to where it stops spinning, and that's good enough. There's that lock nut at the very bottom that kind of prevents you from going too far. But if you over tighten that bolt, you're going to cause so many problems for yourself, I can almost promise you. The worst case is that the thread, the giant bolt, snaps, and then you have the threaded part that's still in the PTO housing. If you get lucky, you can try to extract it, but the more likely case is that you're going to have to pull the engine to remove the PTO cover, and you're going to have to replace the PTO cover. Because there's only so much you can do in there. It's a tap. If you try to thread that bolt and you try to use a tap and die and pull it out, or a bolt extractor, it's an oil filter housing. You're going to get metal shavings in, and then it's bad news. You literally have no choice. You have to remove the engine to replace the PTO or whatever. Or the best case scenario is that you crack the filter housing top. It's just thin aluminum. So if you push on it, or if you pull on it too hard, you will crack the top. Now, they have that threaded bolt on the bottom to kind of prevent you from over tightening it. So the likely scenario is that you're going to break the stem and you're going to have to pull the engine. So do not over tighten that bolt. Just get it till it bottoms out, and that's good enough. You do not need to over tighten it. All right, guys. So after about 3 or 4 crankovers, this is where we sit. It's about 4 liters. Generally, it should be about the 3.5. So it's either overfilled or it's mixed with water. In this case, we know it's mixed with water. So I'm going to go ahead and drain this out, and then we'll put in some fresh oil. All right, with the fresh oil in, what I want to do is start the ski just to kind of circulate the oil through. Now, I'm only going to do it for a few seconds because we don't want to connect the hose since we know the intercooler is bad, and all we're going to do is pump water back into the engine. So I'm going to start the engine, let it run for 5 seconds or so just to kind of build up enough oil pressure to circulate, and then that'll be it. All right, that's good enough. All right, guys, that's going to be the end of this video. Since this is my ski, I'm probably going to make a project series out of this in case you want to follow along, but each video topic will be specific to something with just one topic in mind. So, of course, this project intro was basically just going over a ski that we bought used, looking for various problems. The next video, I'm not sure which one I'll put out next. It's either going to be the intercooler replacement. I'm also going to be putting a bilge pump in, just a Seaflow 750, just like I do on all of my skis. So I'll do an entire video showing how to do the wiring, the outlet install, and all that stuff. I did have a bilge pump install video in the past, but it was more so just kind of going over what the final product looks like and not necessarily showing the install from start to finish. So I'll show you that. I'm also going to be doing a air intake, and of course also doing some plastic restoration using truck bed liner spray. So we'll see what I do next, but for this video, that's going to be it. If you guys have any questions or anything, just let me know.